It's just been 4 days since the release of the Leo trailer and it has already amassed over 40 million views, making it one of the most viewed trailers from India. And as expected, the trailer was able to create mass hysteria, given the fact that the film did not even have an audio launch, a cultural event in itself for a Vijay movie. But just as the trailer clocked up millions of views, it also generated just as many opinions and comparisons to older films from both Hollywood and Tamil movies. Among the loudest of these comparisons are to David Cronenberg's A History of Violence, which is about a diner owner in a remote village who steps up and kills two robbers with uncharacteristic skill and precision. In other words, it's about an average family man who lives in an uneventful place who becomes the unlikely town hero when he's visited by a bunch of uninvited guests. Leo's director Lokesh Kanagaraj is said to have acquired the rights of the graphic novel that inspired the film, and in first glance, the film seems to be a massified version set in Kashmir. But this is only one aspect of the comparisons. If you are a lover of mass Indian cinema, there cannot be a plot that is more familiar to us. And if you've grown up watching Tamil cinema, even A History of Violence is a film you may think is inspired from one teeny-weeny, super niche indie that released in 1995. I think that film was called Baasha.
In the Baasha, oru thadave sonna, nooru thadave sonna madre.
So why is it that even Leo 2 is being compared to Rajnikanth's blockbuster, apart from A History of Violence? Is it because a seemingly Pavam Vijay has to return to action after he has decided to leave behind his past for a peaceful new life? Or is it because the trailer teases us with a meaner Vijay who would never take up a job as wholesome as that of a chocolatier? Using Leo as a subject, let's try to understand why the Baasha formula will always remain an integral part of mass cinema. So what really is this Baasha formula? As most of you would know, Suresh Krishna's Baasha was partly inspired from another film Rajnikanth acted in. 5 years before Baasha, Superstar had played one of the three leads in a moderately hit Hindi film called Hum, directed by Mukul Anand. Just like how Rajini's anger or rage became the central motor of Baasha, Hum too revolved around Amitabh Bachchan's anger or the lack of it. It was truly a radical idea given how you are showing the angry young man as one without any anger. His anger was central to this persona, and to write a script in which he's in control of this rage is pretty much like writing a version of Thor, but without his hammer. Of course, Hum begins with Tiger getting to kick butt, playing the savior to voiceless dock workers. But when a fight leads to the death of Tiger's father and stepmother, he has to move away with his two siblings to shield them from the netherworld-like life at the docks. He even has to chumma jumma goodbye. Chumma chumma de de. Chumma chumma de de. Chumma. Cut to 20 years later and a tiger seems to have lost his tooth. He exchanges his greasy uniform for outfits that suit a dignified timber merchant settled in Ooty. He is now Shekhar Malhotra. He grows a thin moustache, wears spectacles, and his brothers have grown to become a police officer and a college heartthrob. Though he is loved and respected by his family, he's not exactly the action hero he was in his Pichle Janam or his past life. In one scene, Rajnikanth looks at him and says, A scene later, Shekhar lands up at a nightclub to pull his two brothers away from a deadly fight dance-off. The two brothers even suggest a remedy to fix his cowardice: marriage. Two up-and-coming stars calling the superstar a coward isn't exactly an idea you would find in many mass cinema toolkits, but the script could afford the emasculation because it was building up to a glorious payoff. Later, as Shekhar and his family look for his missing sister-in-law at a bus station, a driver pushes his buttons a bit too much. Looking at her photo, he says, anyone can kidnap a beauty like her. Shekhar, patient still, looks back and asks him to speak with Tamiz. Or what, he replies to a shot of Shekhar removing his glasses, his hair flying, and with him looking down for a split second. From senti violence, Lakshmikant Pyarelal now switched to a set of blaring trumpets that sound like a siren forewarning an explosion. And an explosion it is, and Tiger is Zinda again. It is also perhaps the genesis of the first real hero transformation scene. It is the scene where Bruce Banner becomes Hulk or when Dr. Jekyll turns into Mr. Hyde. In the thesaurus of mass Indian cinema, we got an entry for the transformation scene, and for audiences all over, the scene led to mass hysteria and uniform piloerection. The unwritten rule for this effect goes thus: the ecstasy one feels at this transformation is inversely proportional to the emasculation the hero or the heroine faces until that point. In Rajnikanth's Baasha, the humiliation his character Manikyam faces is twofold. At first, he's tied to a lamppost and beaten to pulp after he begs a gangster to punish him instead of his younger brother. The insult is then doubled when Manikyam's sister is molested by the same gangster at the town center. For Rajnikanth fans, it's already more than an hour of their god being beaten and insulted. After his inability to retaliate, even the villain believes that Manikyam is a wimp. So when a goon runs towards Manikyam after he saves his sister, his punch is stronger thanks to an hour of great screenwriting choices that create the effect of a dormant volcano finally erupting. Talking to The Hindu, its director Suresh Krishna remarked that it's no joke to write a Rajini film's first half without a fight. In fact, he runs away whenever he sees commotion. When I first narrated the screenplay to the team, everyone was aghast that there was no fight or comedy in the first half. And the worst part was that Rajnikanth, a superstar, gets tied up to a lamppost and beaten. In Dhanush and Vetrimaaran's Asuran, a layered and political film that uses the bare skeleton of Baasha, the humiliation is even more painful. To get the dominant caste landlords to spare his older son and family, Sivasamy is asked to prostrate and touch the feet of every male caste member of the village. And he does that. Until that point, as a drunkard and an irresponsible parent, Sivasamy is seen as a weak, broken man who is willing to let go of his land for peace. But when the landlord's henchmen finally catch up to him escaping, we see Sivasamy transform into his old self, the man who once massacred many in revenge. In Vishwarupam, the transformation scene doesn't take until the end of the first half to happen. Playing an effeminate Kathak dancer, Vis becomes his raw agent self in a matter of minutes. With a siren playing in the background and the sound of bones crushing and eyeballs squishing, we see it becoming a different film with just one great action scene. But there's more to the Baasha formula than this weakening of its lead character. A year before the release of Hum, we also saw the release of a film that would contribute another important fixture to this formula. This was Satriyan, a Vijaykant starrer written by Ratnam. Even in Satriyan, the hero we meet is considered weak, who retreats to a bottle each night and mundane work during the day. So when Banu, an outsider, enters his family, she's disgusted his lack of involvement in the crime happening around him. In the hero's journey, her appeal is the call to adventure, which is met with his refusal to the call. Our feeling about him at this point is exactly that of Banu's. Why isn't this man doing anything? Instead of humiliation, what makes Paneerselvam appear weak is his indifference. And what works doubly to create this impact among the audience is that we do not know his backstory. Without knowing the suffering he has gone through to make up the decision to step back, it's only natural that we feel what Banu feels. In Hum, since we know right from the start the events that lead to Tiger's taming, the transformation may always feel like a matter of time. But in Satriyan and in Baasha later, the screenplay ensures that we wait patiently to be introduced to a new person altogether. It is this hybridization of the scripts of Hum and Satriyan that finally became Baasha. In Baasha, the secret of the second identity is more complex. In Hum, his violent past is not known to anyone in his family. But in Satriyan, his previous life is unknown only to Banu and us, the audience, because we meet him through her. And by the time we get to Baasha, we know as little about Manikyam's double life as his family members. As a result, Suresh Krishna can afford to use a series of reaction shots to mark this departure. Along with his family, since we too are new to this information, it doesn't feel like an overkill when he places 7 reaction shots before Deva's theme goes Baasha, Baasha. Vijay's theory, written by Atlee, is a fine mix of Satriyan and Baasha. His character is again introduced to us as a wimp, the kind whose little daughter is braver than he is. He is a baker and is shown to be generally non-committal to the issues around him. Through his daughter's school teacher, we see this side of him before an attack on his daughter leads to the eruption of the dormant police officer he once was, removing him from the ordinary world back to the special world of good guys and bad guys. The reason why the secret identity is so effective in Baasha is the placement of its flashback. Several films that use the Baasha format choose to place the flashback at different places, almost always for the same effect. The effect is repeated in Chiranjeevi's Indra 2 when an angry governor retreats once he realizes that the man he has come to attack is in fact Indrasena. Telugu blockbusters that released post Baasha chose to use a longer flashback that takes up almost the majority of the second half. In both Indra and Balakrishna Samhara Simha Reddy, the film spends a longer time taking us back to their more prosperous past life, leaving us with little expectations for a final showdown when we return to present time. In Kamal Hassan's Vishwarupam, the flashback becomes the film in itself. This is so given that the film is a two-parter and also because his identity as a Kathak dancer is just a cover to protect his two previous identities, one as that of an Al-Qaeda operative and another as a part of India's research and analysis wing. Even though the use of flashbacks varies from film to film, one thing that's consistent is the way that these films write the new timid identities of the lead characters. Switching between cowardice, physical weakness or indifference, the way the Manikyam character is written in these films follows interesting patterns. In most cases, the new character is shown to be financially weaker than he was in his more dangerous, affluent past. In Indra and in Ajit's Vedalam, they both play innocent taxi drivers operating in Varanasi and Kolkata respectively. Their clothes remain earthy shades of brown or red and often Vibhuti takes precedence over a red tikka. In Mohanlal's Ustad 2, a film that's closer in spirit to Hum than Baasha, we see him play Parmeshwaran, a simpleton who will only wear a mundu and a white shirt, although he's wealthier. In Samara Simha Reddy, he works in a humble eatery, serving food, making batter and doing other odd jobs. In Mammutti's replica of Baasha titled Raja the Raja, he runs a roadside petrol bunk. Vijaykanth is a mechanic in Satriyan and Junior NTR plays a domestic help in Simhadri. And in the case of both Vishwarupam and Narasimha Naidu, the new identity is that of an effeminate dancer to further push the contrast between the real and the undercover identities. First impressions suggest that in Leo, Vijay too plays a chocolatier, which is already a more wholesome version of the baker he played in At Least Terry. In films that merely use the transformation sequence of Baasha, they stick to using the lead character's physical weakness as the reason why they do not answer the call to action.
Terry baby.
In Pandiyanadu, Vishal's character's lack of courage is coupled with a stammering problem. Vishal then gets another weakness in Nan Sigapu Manithan, where he falls asleep if its heart rate is lowered. And in Onion and in Prithviraj's Pudhiya Mugam, they both come from extremely conservative Brahmin backgrounds who have some trauma from their childhood. And if Leo is in fact a version of a history of violence, it will be at this point in which he fully owns up to his former identity as a hitman for hire. Among the films mentioned above, which used either the whole formula or part of it, there's no denying the amount of success it has achieved. Either ways, duality in our leads is a trait that has captivated audiences for centuries. Until these films, what was more common was this effect being achieved through the same character playing two roles. In MGR's Enga Vittu Pillai, Ramu plays the innocent coward or the archetype that would later belong to the Manikyams or the Shakers, just as how the Ilango would play the angrier tough man that would accommodate the Baasha personality. Even in the more recent Indiran, Rajnikanth himself gives us Vasigaran, the coward-like nerd and 2.0. But with Satriyan, Hum, Baasha and the many versions it spawned, the audience got their absolute wish fulfillment. Not only do they see a reflection of them in their inability to react and respond to the things happening around them in the first half, they also get to see the fantasy of these personal cages being cut open to see them become the Hulk-like, Hyde-like, Tiger-like monster that's a part of all of us. In a sense, it's a film that gives us a character that's exactly like us and also the character we would like to be. Without an ability to get our transformation scenes, we are best limited to watching a version of Baasha, not once but 100 times. Call it a repeat or not, but there are few feelings that are as exhilarating than the sight of a superstar transforming from a timid nobody to the titular beast himself. And no matter how many versions of the formula we have seen before, come October 19th, we might be walking out of the theatres saying,
bloody sweet.